At the height of the Cold War, the most dangerous military force in Central America wasn't a rogue army. It was a fruit company. A multi-billion-dollar monopoly that grew bananas. This single American corporation owned over 40% of the private land in Guatemala. They controlled every mile of its railroads and dictated its laws. They were an empire operating inside a sovereign nation. But when a new president stepped up and threatened their massive profit margins, the fruit company didn't just sue. They called in the CIA. This is the dark true story of how the United Fruit Company hired the father of modern propaganda, manipulated the United States government, and launched a classified military coup, all to protect the price of a banana. To understand how a fruit company could command the American government, we have to look at their balance sheet. By the early 1950s, the United Fruit Company was the single largest employer in all of Central America. They didn't just grow fruit, they owned the grid, they owned every mile of railroad tracks, and they controlled the country's only deep-water port. For decades, the company paid effectively $0 in corporate taxes, manipulating local politicians to keep their profit margins untouched. Guatemala was the original banana republic, a nation entirely subservient to a foreign corporate board. But in 1951, the corporate monopoly broke. A democratically elected reformer named Jacobo Arbenz took power. President Arbenz saw the inequality and passed Decree 900, a law to buy back uncultivated corporate land and give it back to poor farmers. The government offered to compensate United Fruit, paying them the exact value that the company had listed on their official tax forms. But there was a massive catch: to avoid paying taxes, United Fruit had been severely undervaluing their land for years. Now, their own tax loop was being used to strip them of their empire. Their margins were about to vanish. United Fruit needed a nuclear option, so they hired Edward B. Arnaiz, the pioneer of modern public relations and propaganda. B. Arnaiz launched a massive smear campaign, convincing the American public that Guatemala's land reform was actually a Soviet communist invasion. The connection went deeper. The director of the CIA, Allen Dulles, and the Secretary of State, John Foster Dulles, were both major shareholders in United Fruit. In 1954, President Eisenhower authorized Operation PB Success, a classified CIA operation to bomb the Capitol and overthrow the president. The coup succeeded. Arbenz fled, and the new military dictator immediately gave all the land back to United Fruit, proving that sometimes corporate margins are worth a war. But this wasn't the only time a massive consumer brand used global trade loops to build an empire. Click right here to see how Pepsi built a rogue navy.